Welcome back, everyone, to day 2 of a Dolls Holiday Celebration. I'm here with Michael Canadas. Good morning.
Hi, everyone at Ruby Lane. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning. We had such a wonderful day yesterday and learned and saw so many things. We brought you 6 seminars and it was delightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and so we are excited to be here for day 2, and we are kicking off with China Delights. We're going to sit down for this one because these delightful China dolls are tiny. So we're going to move right here so we can get our cameras close up.
I think we'll start with this little one. So, 1987 was a very good year for us. My mother had won the lottery, $50,000. And it was the first time we'd ever been out of the country, and she took us on a trip. And we went to England. And one of the reasons I'm showing this little china, which we bought this china for 70 pounds, which was actually a lot of money at that time for us. And it was just luck that we found it. And I think it was on Portobello Road that we found her. And what I think is really wonderful about this doll is the costuming is very naive. It was made by obviously a little child, and you can see the stitches aren't perfect, but she did get better as she went along, and you can see in her white works that she got pretty darn good with her sewing. And the doll came with a little provenance. And it said this was made by my sister 70 years ago. And in the provenance, there's a quotation about evaluation. So about the time that this doll came onto the market, they started taxing estates where everything had to be evaluated. And so we kind of know exactly, doing the numbers backwards, how old the little girl is, which is 1860s. And
she's tiny too.
She's tiny.
Just so you guys can see with a hand, and I have a rather large hand, but she's what, 3.5 inches tall, maybe?
Yes, and I think for children, that's a challenge for them to dress that little size. And they made little hats that she can wear, little tams, and they also made a little morning costume for her. And she probably had many more clothing items. And this is the type of a wardrobe doll that you could find on Ruby Lane with the little simple costumes that, you know, maybe they're not the greatest workmanship. There's something about them that
so much character.
Character, yes, and charm. Mm-hmm. But, you know, they did manage to have some really nice blonde lace, which I need to sit down and repair it a little bit. With. It's fun to play with. And this is the kind of doll that you could put in a doll house, or you could put in under a dome, or you could put her in a room box. And I've pretty much done all of those things. But it's a little precious little find that, you know, I am now 30 plus years later still delighted to have it. And I think it was 70 pounds.
The buttons on the
bottom, and which is very English too. You know, there's a lot of dolls that were decorated with buttons in England. And I think that, I don't have my glasses on, but are those 2 holes or 3 holes?
4 holes.
4 holes, okay. And they're nice little mother of pearl buttons. And most likely those buttons came from came from America, because we had a whole industry of shell buttons being made in America for
look at that.
David, where did your grandfather, didn't they get the buttons out of the rivers where you lived?
Yes, freshwater mussels.
Yeah, freshwater mussels. So there was a whole industry, and David's grandfather worked in a button factory, and they made those buttons
like
that.
Yeah, buttons in themselves are just such wonderful mysteries and things to collect. And
absolutely.
There's button conventions out there, but she is just such a little tiny delight.
Yeah, she is a tiny little delight. It's a simple little thing. You know, in we're our China collection is just really kind of beginning. So she'll represent that type of head. Maybe we'll have one or two bigger of that same model, but I think she's a really great representation.
She is a lot of fun.
And also too, that for me, this little doll was beginner's luck. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew that China head dolls were old, and I loved the colors of the costumes, but it was really just beginner's luck.
And what are a couple features on this doll that for our viewers that they can differentiate between this doll and maybe a 1900 China head or a 1910?
The number one thing on this particular doll is the flat feet. So if you notice the flat feet, that's 18. Oops, something went down.
Something went down. We're live. We'll find out in a minute.
Wasn't my display. The flat feet.
See
is
if
the
you guys
number
can
one,
see that. Look at those wonderful flat feet.
Yeah, the number one thing is the flat feet, and the later models would have a molded heel, but this period, the 1850s, 50s, 60s, the what was in style for ladies was
Flat feet. So
flat
we're going to
shoes.
keep that in mind when we're looking at China heads and
Absolutely.
learning on what to look for the earlier ones.
Yeah, and that's one of and then the shape of the hands, the China hands. Although in China heads, those things can all be replaced, or this head could have been bought in 1860, and they didn't get around to making a body until the 1890s, and then so you can find in China's kind of strange combinations because they didn't necessarily come as whole dolls. They would be put together
very true. Yeah.
in families. I think I've said this before on when my great grandmother came to California. She took her own doll, cut the head off the body, threw the body away because she didn't need to take the old body because she could make it any body.
Right. Oh,
they had that ability
happens.
then to do things.
Well, what a fun little grouping right there.
It is. And it just has an incredible charm. And she's got a whole mourning costume, and that's probably for Prince Albert. When Prince Albert died, that she probably went into mourning, and it's just a really charming thing. Now let's do a quantum leap. 1987. 2016, I know a little more. So here is a wonderful Victoria. And this is tiny. So this doll is probably Kessner, and it's probably about 1840.
Look at her wonderful hairstyle.
It could be anywhere from 1835 to 1840. And it's Victoria with exposed ears. So you've got the loop and the braid that goes up and comes back into a coil. I know that everybody right now is watching the miniseries Victoria on PBS, which is excellent. But here she is young. And what's very interesting about Victoria and Albert, the region that Albert was from, he was a Prince of Coburg, that is half an hour away from the major world doll making area. And Victoria and Albert had a real connection with Coburg, and Victoria requested that all the dolls be made with blue eyes, and they pretty much did. But if you notice this one,
you look close here.
She's got brown eyes, which makes her very rare to find. Don't you agree, Judy?
It is.
Because we have in our audience
we see the blue, we see the
China
brown.
Collector.
Brown are usually always rarer.
Yes.
With almost every
but
kind of doll.
tiny,
Yeah.
it's really something. And also
She's
it's
about 6 inches tall, I would say, or 5.5.
Yes, and I think that she ultimately, her head was bought and sent off to Paris, and she was outfitted with a body because she has a very early version of a French fashion doll body, similar more to like what a Pauline papier-mâché would have, but it's a very early little body.
Love the way her feet kind of flare out like
Yes.
that.
And she has everything except she doesn't have a nice pair of shoes. So at some point, I'll have to find her pair of shoes. But what was really delightful is she came with this wonderful handmade trunk, all lined in linen, and these really adorable clothing items. And I want to point out, as I got this ready for you this morning, I found this large slip and another large piece. Well, that one probably, but this large slip.
Look at that.
Sometimes when you have dolls that are in trunks, they have clothing that didn't belong to them. And it's not, don't necessarily always take it as, you know, it's not someone put it together. A trunk contained the family's doll clothes. So that's where they would store the things. So then you realize that there were probably more dolls than you see. Like for instance, this china, it's easy to figure out that at one time they were twins. So because we have two identical dresses, why would you make that unless there was a twin?
Twins, yeah.
But I wouldn't get rid of the dress. So unless I really feel that it's, no way was it, I mean, a great indication that it's not original to the doll if you find a price tag on it. Sometimes I've had that happen. And then you know it's not original. But I will leave the pieces in with the doll. But look at this adorable little bonnet. They've used reed to go in and make this, you know, just really perfect little piece.
So sweet.
Yeah, and absolutely works on her. And a beautiful little mantle. And this green was probably, when it was new, it's probably shocking, you know, Kelly green, just a dark,
very bright and
beautiful,
vibrant.
yeah,
Yes,
beautiful little
beautifully.
work.
If you guys are tuning in, we are looking at Tiny China Delights as part of our doll celebration. And these are delightful dolls, are just so neat and so charming to see such beautifully made clothes by somebody that really loved them.
Yeah, sure. And look at that. I mean, it's almost, the print is just phenomenal. And the little workmanship. And you could barely look at the little seams.
Tiny seams. Look at that.
Just minuscule. You know, they did not have electric irons to do that. That had to be done
All by hand.
With your iron that you put on the stove to heat it up, and to make those turns is pretty amazing.
These details are so interesting to see and to get close-up views of for our viewers, just so when they are out and about and looking at things, they can differentiate the very old sewing.
Yes, and there is a difference. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can see that the skill level of this person that created this is someone older and advanced, where this item has that naive, childlike, but you can see that they were already getting really good at their stitches. They were getting there. And of course she has her own little doll, and this was probably added to her later on, but it's a cute doll, because this may have been played with by more than one generation. And then she has a wonderful little Dresden trunk. This is probably actually really an ornament for a tree or something, but it works perfect for her as a little trunk. And then of course her chemises. She has two chemises and two slips. So she's got a nice little group of clothes. And again, this is the kind of doll that could go in a dollhouse, or it could also go in a room box, or just in a little tableau, which is how we have her.
Wonderful. So about what time period did they quit doing the exposed ears?
I think about 1840.
Okay.
As soon as Victoria changed her hairstyle, it became, it was out. So fashion could go on for a period of time, but when it was out, it was out. And soon she changed that. About 1840, maybe 42. You know, we could actually research that and find that out pretty quickly.
So the dolls with the exposed ears are very hard to find.
They're very hard to find and they're very priced. I mean, I think that if one comes up on Ruby Lane, which they have, they get snatched up really
Immediately.
fast. Don't they, Judy?
Did Judy find one? We have a studio audience here today, which is so fun. We get to share it with people, doll collectors here in Carmel, and of course here in Pacific Grove, and of course all of you out there in Doll World on Ruby Lane. So this was such a tiny delight.
It's a tiny delight, and I do believe we may be visiting one of the most famous antique stores in the world today.
Did you hear that, everyone? We're going to take you to visit one of the most famous antique stores in the world, and I guarantee you a lot of you have been there before.
Yes, I'm sure they have.
We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
Bye.